Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonus. And now, Dr. Peggy Polonus.
Everyone, welcome back to the Leadership Thread. I'm so happy today to have with us Elena Panaritis. Welcome, Elena, and thank you for joining us. Just a couple of buzzwords. I know there's so many things that you have done and are doing in your life, and we definitely want to hear about all that. More importantly, we want to hear about who you are. But I just want to say a few things. Thought for action. You're an institutional economist, have worked for the World Bank, member of the Greek Parliament. You have been an advisor to the Prime Minister. What can I say about the documentary, 70% Informals, and so many other things. But here's one question that I want to start with. As a change agent, one of the things that you said, the way that you bring about change is by changing the rules that block the change from happening. So if we were to go back to your childhood, what are some of the rules in your family, spoken or unspoken, that helped you to become a change agent, that were not non-negotiable? What were some of the rules in the family?
I think the most dear one, I wouldn't call it a rule, I would call it a value.
Yes. Tell me about that value.
Yeah. So it came from something that was not discussed or talked about, but it was this unconditional love that I received tremendously from my grandmother, a very strong woman in our family. I actually grew up a lot with her when I was in Greece. Due to my dad's career, he would have to travel a lot, and Mom was traveling with him, and I was the only kid. So I was originally born in Greece, but traveled to with Dad and Mom to France and Brussels and Italy. Had to deal with different educational systems, had to deal with different languages that, of course, I was not aware of earlier, right? I didn't speak French before I went there. I didn't even speak Greek before I left the country. I was a very late bloomer in my language skills. But then when we returned back in Athens, for the, say, 7 years that I lived there, I was with Mom and Dad, but on and off. Mainly with my grandmother.
With your grandmother.
And there was this very strong woman. There was never a concept. There was a concept of discipline through love. There was never a concept of you can't do this, you can't do that. That was my mom's side. That's why it's a little more tough to deal with Mom sometimes, even today. But there was this unconditional love was one thing. The second part was to always be just. And there was never a concept of being just with one specific individual versus another individual, or even with human versus animals, or poor versus rich. Everybody is supposed to be receiving the same smile of politeness, of good morning or good evening from yourself to them and them to you. And I would never forget my grandmother saying once, I remember, out of the blue, she would just cook or have tea with me in the afternoon. And she would say, dogs, cats, because they don't have a language that you can hear and understand, you don't think they are hurting. That's why you should never be out with kids that throw stones at them or play with them badly or torture them. You should always look after animals. We're talking about the 70s right now, right? We're talking about the 70s where emancipation in the United States of America and the right of voting of the Black people came in the 60s, 66, 63. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about like a woman that was very much ahead of herself.
Forward-thinking woman. So you're talking about a very strong woman who was your role model, right?
Very
because
much so.
the fact that you spent time with your grandmother when your parents were away, that gave you a choice in terms of what you were seeing as women role models between mom and grandma. You're talking about somebody who had unconditional love, and you're talking about somebody who talked about equality in a lot of different ways. So you didn't really, separate. She just gave. She just taught you
all
to give.
All the time. And she was always, again, because I I started speaking late Greek. So my first language was French. Then, I had to learn Greek.
Yeah.
Like most people that had immigrated, and they were the second generation of an Greek immigrant in America, right?
Yeah.
So I had to go to Saturday school. I had to go to Sunday school. And I couldn't understand why I had to do that with all the other immigrant kids, because I was not an immigrant. I happened to be there because my dad was working for NATO, let's say, right?
Yeah.
But still, I was like this confusion in my head, right? And I remember going home again, and I was telling my grandmother, I was dyslexic, by the way, and I had no idea. I found out in my 30s.
Yeah.
And I was saying, Granny, I don't want to study so much. It's so hard. It takes so long to read and finish my homework. I really don't want to go to university. And she would say, well, you have to do what you really love doing. But I really see you as Indira Gandhi. Like, who is Indira Gandhi? Who is this woman? Until Indira Gandhi was shot. And then she said, oh, no, I wasn't really meaning Indira Gandhi. I really meant Mrs. Thatcher. She was witty at the same time, and giving me these role models of other women that I was not aware of. And she wasn't saying, you have to have, 16 PhDs and 32 language degrees. You got to get good grades.
You have to do this. She was just saying, look at the possibilities.
Always of the possibility. And always through her life, she suffered through the Second World War. Her husband died. She was looking for her husband. Her husband was killed. She was missing, killed, everything. And she gave me this strength of a woman that was able to go through all this, a mother of 5 that remained widowed with nobody to help her. And she managed so beautifully well. And her kids became, very recognized professionals and scientists and so on. So I guess right now I could say that I'm unstoppable. There is no way I'm going to get an unjustifiable no, and I'm going to say yes, okay, fine, because
and you're going to live with it. You're not going to live with it. You're going to go on. So that makes actually absolute sense when I think about you pioneering social entrepreneurship. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I was working. Again, I study economics. I study architecture as well at the Greek University at the Metsovio in Athens. And there is a master's degree at Johns Hopkins in economics. And I decided to quit architecture. I was studying also economics as a bachelor's degree here in the American University in Athens. And I go immediately to study master's. They do my master's and my postdoc, my graduate work at Johns Hopkins in Washington, until I find out, of course, that there is a dual degree with Italy in Bologna, which I loved for some reason. It was my growing experience, Italy, so I loved being there. So in this whole experience, I thought, you know what? All these people I'm studying in economics, that they are amazing theorists, amazing brains. What about these guys that are amazing theorists, amazing brains, and have put something in practice? So I followed the last names of those guys who had gone to a place to put all their theory in practice, and that was the World Bank. So I really applied for the World Bank, and I applied and I reapplied and I reapplied. And although I had jobs to work in New York in investment banks, it was the 90s. Investment banks were booming.
Yeah.
And also there was a crisis. They were booming and they were also closing due to the crisis. At the same time, there were mergers and so on. I chose to go to the least, if you like, secure job, which was the World Bank. The World Bank was not offering a green card or a career that would take you to becoming an American citizen, whereas the investment banks were. I chose to do this because my curiosity was getting fulfilled as opposed to be a banker. A banker was more detailed in one specific focal area. I thought at the time, right? 23, okay. I was a young 23. Kid. Yeah.
Wow. So you chose the road less traveled.
The road less traveled. Yeah, well, yeah. So I went to the bank And then I noticed that we are supposed to work for the needy and the third. We didn't used to call it the third world. Now I hear people use this term more.
Right.
We used to call it the developing world. Then I asked a very simple question. Why is this developing world not developed yet? It's been in development since 45 and onwards. And, Bangladesh, Pakistan has not really graduated from these organizations. Japan has, Chile was about to graduate. And that's when I realized that we had some limitations. Although the organization was it's a place of the best and the brightest brains, frankly. And when I was asked to go work there, I was thinking, wow, they probably made a mistake. It was not the digital era yet. So they probably wanted to put a no and they put a yes by mistake. You know what But then I started really doing very well. My boss used to say, you're a junior working in a senior league. I was very good in what I was very good at and still am? I can listen to the clients, to the country leaders' angst. Because the country leader, of course, wants to have low inflation, of course, wants to get out of an economic crisis. Yeah. Of course. But at the same time, he goes back to bed and he deals with his extended family that doesn't have income, the poverty that is out there in the streets, the depression that may be generated. It's very different to be there 24 hours a day. And for us going in there as a World Bank IMF mission to help them out, and we just look at some numbers.
And then go away.
That's what it was.
And someone who lives with that. So I want to go back. Do you remember, was there a defining moment when you said, I'm going to be a change agent. I'm going to make things happen?
I didn't really. I think it came organically.
Yeah.
So I was there at the bank. I was traveling in a specific country in Latin America. It was the early 90s. I'm talking about crisis, if you recall, that minus 17% of GDP.
Yeah.
Hyperinflation of 1 million% a year. People who lived in the poverty line, 63% with $1 a day.
Yeah.
I mean, this was shocking to me. And I would go there and I said, I would like actually really very much to go and visit anything outside the city and the Ministry of Finance. Oh, that's very dangerous. Yes, because there was a lot of terrorism. There was a lot of looting. There was a lot of happening there. You could have been killed at no time. Anyway, I kind of got myself into, I asked the Minister of Finance if they would allow me to go. So we went with a car that, it had, bulletproof everything. I had at those days, you had to have a beeper and a cell phone. Very high security, but very, very low level. I mean, you wouldn't see it, not that obvious, obscure. So I go there and we start noticing what they used to call themselves informals. That's where the 70% informals comes from. And they say, these people are informals.
Yeah.
And I find people that were in the car with me. Yes, we are informals, he says. And I'm like, what the heck does informals mean? I know informal Friday, yeah? You're casual, right? What is informal? And he goes, well, you are a Greek, educated in Europe and in America, and you try to understand us. And it really hurt me because here I am, yes, a Greek that chose to work for the World Bank, that chose to do something good for the world because I liked the concept that the theory had an effect in the actual practicality of humans. And as we are in the field, and they are talking about the fact that they don't have, in theory, we call it property rights, secure ownership. These people were just like in slums, if you wish. So there was a group of people trying to help, and I was involved in providing that security. So they had them all in a little assembly in a place. And next to me, there was a lady she said later on, she looked over 45, 3 little kids. She was 25, 23. And she lifts her hand and says, "Can I also have a security of ownership in my house that has no roof?"
Oh.
And I was like, okay, my Spanish is really bad, but roof, what does that mean? It means she doesn't have a roof? And I went back home to the hotel. And magically, that one ring rings, which is my mom telling her all the story about there is no roof in this house, which means that 63% of the population, the majority of them, don't live in homes without a roof. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, "Elena, kanekati, do something." And that kind of like brought me back to the fact that I was not that crazy, that whatever I was doing was not wrong. And that was the ignition. And I decided to devote myself in doing something about these people. So I went back to the office and I told all my amazing bosses, we're supposed to work for these people. And I got answers such as my paycheck says World Bank, doesn't say poor people. I would hear anything you could imagine because it wasn't fitting. So I was trying to understand, why is it not really fitting? Why does it only fit to work with the Ministry of Finance? So after a fulfilled 12 year at the World Bank, I chose to withdraw. After I did my whole flagship project to review this, to change it with great success, to continue this work outside the bank. Because I really felt that
that's where you're going to make the difference.
I felt that, you know what, I'm dealing with already a very difficult problem. But then the agents that are supposed to change the problem are not really interested in changing it. And then I wasn't, not because they were bad people.
No.
And that's when I started studying more and more why. And we went to the bottom of it. Very simple. Historical circumstances led to the fact that it's always easier to do something which is related to measurable results, such as we will build a school, we will build a highway, we will build a hospital, but not about building a rule of law that is equal, not building property rights that are simple and permissible to everybody. And that's what I dedicated. So I left the World Bank and I dedicated my life there, my career there. Grandmother was not around anymore. But you know what? I do have her sometimes in my dreams telling me that it's okay. I don't know if it's her telling me it's okay or it's my wishful thinking.
I don't know. I want to ask you then, because it sounds like, and I want to know a little bit more about, I want to know about Thought 24.
Thought for Action.
For Action, rather. The thought process that went into creating this, before I get to the next question, which is really
the triple bottom line, social entrepreneurship. So it was late 1990s, before I even left the bank. So I thought, I helped a lot of private sector get involved into the work I was doing as a World Bank employee. So I was leading the reform programs related to property right changes and system changes in the countries, but they needed to be pegged, they needed to be glued together with a private sector that was making sense, not private sector that was there only interested in making money, but interested in making money and do good at the same time. And you know what? When you make money and do good at the same time, your sustainability of making money is much longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And guess what?
Not to mention your sustainability of your well-being.
Your well-being as well. And then also, guess the other one. You have clients that are not only your clients, but they like you, they care. Yeah. So what did you generate? You generate an ecosystem of trust, which is the number one element for capitalism, the number one element for health, the number one element for modern economic development, for modern culture. Without trust, we would never have any community. We would never even get married. We would never have any groups more than one.
No predictability, no. Safety, none of that. Yeah.
And think about it. In most countries that suffer from non-sustainable economic growth, there are countries who are led by people who do not trust the system, because obviously the system is not to be trusted, but they don't put any minute to change the system. Instead, they perpetuate the lack of trust, and they bring around them their people of trust.
Exactly. And then spend a lot of time maintaining that. So
you perpetuate that. So that's when I thought, I've done enough of teaching. I taught about it.
Yeah.
I taught economics at Johns Hopkins. I taught at several other places. And I thought, let's really try it. Let's move. Let's evolve. The World Bank and the IMF were fantastic organizations after 1945. Now the Cold War is over. We trust the Russians, at least at that time. We trust the fact that there is no more Soviet Union. We won that war. So let's really move to the next level of evolution and economic development. And that's when I decided that it's no longer thought for thought, but all the thought we've done, let's really put an action to it.
So along those lines, and you're talking about trust, and you're talking about trust in institutions and, in systems and so on and so forth. But we see that nowadays, a lot of young people are not trusting.
Of course.
And they're questioning and they're wondering. And as you know, the mental health issues around the world have gone way up, especially, younger ages, more and more younger kids, because they're really saying, well, what's the point of getting a degree? What's the point of doing this? What's the point of doing that when the world is really not there to support me and what I need and what I want? What do we say to young people?
So you're absolutely right. And my whole campaign about 70% informals is a hope campaign as opposed to a negative campaign. What does it really say? That the way we have actually lived our lives after 1945, we have gone to a point where poverty was reduced because of technological development. And that was around the 90s.
Yeah.
But then poverty started to increase again, and worse, inequality started to increase. So poverty increases, marginalization increases, precariousness increases. People have more than one job to make ends meet. The middle class is basically going
non-existent.
Yeah. And then the only thing we still hear about is how AI is going to make the rich richer.
The world a better place.
How democracy is dissolving, how global warming is really a problem, and we're going to survive in a place, we're not going to survive in the place, we're melting our earth. So it's all kind of like things that don't really touch anyone. If you listen to most global agendas out there that are in discussion, we just have the annual meetings of the World Bank and the IMF right now in Washington. Still the same old things, AI, democracy is being reduced. What do we do about it and so on? And I'm thinking, guys, we just need to twist that development paradigm. And instead of only thinking about macroeconomic stability, we should be thinking of how to broaden that stability to more people than just 2 out of 5. Because 70% of the world is marginalized, and this is growing. Do you know, for example, that in Germany right now, 12% of the population are below the poverty line?
Really?
And it's not related to the immigrants.
That's interesting. So
what you see that what you notice with your students, and what you notice with the younger people, who I also, when I teach, I say they're 25. They say, I don't want to get married and have kids. What am I going to give them?
Exactly.
Yeah, what am I going to give them? And I'm thinking, that's why I'm so eager about this campaign, which is audiovisual mainly. It's documentaries and podcasts and trying to what do I'm trying to say? It's easy to change. You just need to put your view in looking at the parallel of another possibility. If we get stuck in the concept of global warming, for instance, how do you resolve it? By nagging.
Right.
By nagging and passing more laws and passing more laws. And then, you know what? These laws, for example, energy efficient homes. increases the cost for the middle class to manage the homes to be energy efficient. So they became angry to the campaign, which is a very important one to start with. But then the way we handle all this, it's kind of like the elite living in a world of their own, and they don't understand how their actions
affects everyone else,
everybody else.
Or don't necessarily care. I do want to. There's one final question I want to end with. It's very important because you mentioned, well, grandmother had everything to do with it. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But still, through all of this career that you've had, journey, I would say life journey, you had a lot of ups and downs, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh.
You look at the world, 70%, it's a lot to deal with.
Huge.
So in your deepest, darkest moments, where do you find the courage to get up in the morning, the strength to keep going, and to keep turning those thoughts into action?
This is a really important question. And I have to tell you that I pray every day. Every single day, I am grateful for having at least been able to achieve what I have so far. And I'm grateful for the fact that I'm still in one piece and I continue. So that's one. And the second part is that every single problem I used to get daunted by problems, and they could be, a problem. I would think it's a problem for you, may not have been a problem, but I was always a very sensitive person. I would always kind of like, oh, how is this going to be resolved? Da, da. Now I kind of eat them for breakfast. And that's because I managed to strengthen as much as I can my spine. And the only way I do that is with love. Yes. I have to, I recently lost my dad, who was he was probably, after my grandmother, the person that would guide me, yeah? When he would say, you have to go to the United States, you have to study. We were in Italy. He chose that I would try the American school, the American high school in Italy, instead of going to an Italian high school in Italy. He would say, try it for the first, 4 weeks. And if you don't like it, you can always leave.
Come back.
Yeah. I have to admit, there was always this concept that now I lost my drive, right? Because I would be able to talk to him about whatever. And I have mom, who I love, and then I sit back and I think it was done for a reason. So I can really also learn how to be patient with people that I adore as my mom, because of course you like people around there, but sometimes you can't really deal with them all the time. And I'm learning how to actually be unconditional as well. Yeah. And you cannot, if I am to change 70%, I'm not changing the 70%. I'm changing the lever that is going to turn everything and raise the tide for all boats. Okay. Yeah. So if I'm supposed to do that, of course, we're going to deal with people that have their own personalities,
mindsets, ideas. But you said something very important, and I want to close with this, because this is something that we try to teach young people nowadays. You said that with love and with trying to make that change so that people can rise, you feel good. You feel you have an internal satisfaction. For me, that's what strengthens psychological muscle.
Absolutely.
That's what really, is worth waking up in the morning for. And I want to thank you for everything that you're doing in the world to make that happen.
Thank you very much.
Being a role model for these young people today.
For being there.
Elena Panaritis, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.